When I first started selling on TPT, I heard so much advice that was honestly really solid advice, but that same advice just doesn't work anymore. And a lot of it's still floating around out there. So in this episode, I'm breaking down 4 old pieces of TPT advice that you can stop wasting your energy on, can stop aiming towards, and give you a few things to focus on instead. Number 1, this one I still hear people saying, although certainly not as much, but it is like the highly sought after. It's like the goal. Everybody wants TPT to be passive, like they want it to be passive income. And I think a lot of people are kind of, even those who've been around for a while, like they have this idea in their head that they're going to post resources to TPT, they're going to spend time growing their business, and then they're going to be able to sit back on the beach, sip their favorite summer drink, and just watch the money roll in. And that's true. You can absolutely do that for a season. But here's the thing that you need to know about TPT, especially now. It is not passive at all. Now, I'm not saying that you have to work super hard or that you're going to have to be working 24/7 once you get your store established. That's not what I'm saying. You can certainly have phenomenal systems put in place to keep your TPT as passive as you possibly can. But like we talked about in the last episode, resources are still going to need to be updated from time to time. You're still going to want to make sure that you're staying on top of SEO because search trends are going to change. Their search engine algorithm is going to have minor tweaks and updates over time. And you're going to want to have some sort of ongoing marketing. And even the best funnel system that uses ads to kind of automate a lot of that marketing for you is still going to have to be monitored. It's still going to have to be looked after, still going to need tweaks and changes, and you're still going to have ongoing marketing, even if it's just writing weekly emails. So even the best well-oiled machine is going to have maintenance. You cannot expect that once you get to $5,000 a month or $10,000 a month, that at that point you're just going to be able to coast. It doesn't work that way. I can tell you that my TPT business has been mostly passive for the last several years, and every single year it goes down. That doesn't mean that I'm not making money on TPT. That doesn't mean that my business isn't still doing well. It just means that over the years, my business has shifted. And so most of the time I make probably anywhere between 2 and 20 times the amount that I make on TPT elsewhere selling my resources. So still selling teaching resources, but I'm just making that money somewhere else, whether that's through a membership, whether it's through selling on my own website, or through other endeavors. Okay. So I make that money in other places and it's not passive at all. I still do direct traffic to my TPT store, but I can tell you that if you are not consistently, regularly directing traffic to TPT, even just taking a focus from directing traffic to TPT to directing traffic elsewhere impacts your sales on TPT. Well, and that part is kind of obvious because if you think about it, you're not going to be making the money on TPT. You're making it elsewhere. It doesn't really matter where it comes from as long as you're making money, right? But what ends up happening is when you start directing traffic away from TPT to, say, your own website or to your course or your membership or whatever, when you start doing some of these things and selling off of TPT, then this isn't a reason not to do it. Okay, I'm not giving you a reason not to do it. That's not it at all. But what ends up happening is over time, those resources that used to be bestsellers for you on TPT, they start to drop in search engine ranking because they're just not getting the same volume of sales as they were before. And so TPT starts sort of deprioritizing those resources. You have to consistently be marketing to TPT in order to see those sales maintain. And you also have to make sure that you're doing some maintenance on your TPT listings themselves. You really need to make sure your previews are still converting, your covers are still getting clicks, because over time, trends change, expectations change, what buyers are attracted to starts to change. And I'm not talking about in the space of 1 to 2 years. I'm talking about a cover that was performing really well 5 years ago, might not perform well this year, or search engine or keywords that buyers were searching for 3 or 4 years ago, they may not be searching for them in the same way now. And so your store is just going to require regular maintenance, and your products are going to require regular updating, and you have to continue to market those resources on TPT if you're wanting to keep the TPT income up. Now, if you're like me and you don't really care if the TPT income stays up, as long as everything's up across the board, then it doesn't really matter. But it is something to keep in mind that if you are chasing that one day I'm going to have passive income from TPT, that's great. And you can have passive income from TPT, but it's probably not going to look the way that a lot of people imagine that it would look. Number 2, TPT newsletter and TPT emails. So if you don't know, TPT sends out a newsletter, and the way that they structure these newsletters has changed a lot over the years. Used to, they would send out a newsletter on Sundays, and if you made it in the newsletter, it would have like 10 free downloads, and it would have like a couple of featured paid products. If you made it in the newsletter, you were big time. Like, it was phenomenal. Even if it was a free product, like a freebie, you would see like thousands of downloads on that freebie. You would see loads of traffic to your store. A lot of times you would see sales on paid products because you would get all of this incredible free traffic from the newsletter that they sent out to their email list. Over time, that newsletter has shifted. For a while, it was completely algorithm driven. It's been personalized. It's had different versions of it. I honestly don't even know where they're at with the newsletter now, to be honest with you. I just know that it's not a big deal. There's a spot on the TPT website where you could go to submit to have a resource placed in the newsletter. If you are new to TPT and you have freebies or resources that you would like to submit to get placed in the newsletter, I don't think it's a bad idea. I just wouldn't do it all the time. So like when I first started, way back when, it was suggested do it every week. You could submit one free product and one paid product. And every week I had a timer. In fact, the timer I think is still on my phone for Tuesdays at 4 p.m. That as soon as I got home from work, that was what I was going to do. I sat down and I would submit a paid product and a free product to the newsletter in hopes that I would get in. I did get a freebie in maybe once or twice, but honestly, I never made any money off of it, or at least not very much. I did get some traffic. I did get a few follows to my store, but it really wasn't anything significant. And it certainly wasn't anything that was life-changing or long-term for me at all. It was a very short-term burst of traffic that I received, and it didn't change the game for me. And I think a lot of people back in the day, like getting into the TPT newsletter could be a huge game changer for your business, both short-term and long-term. And that is just not the case today. The other way that a lot of sellers really try to get into the newsletter or get into the TPT email list is by releasing new resources. And so when you release a new product, an email gets sent to your followers. So anyone who is on TPT, who has a TPT account, they get an email potentially every day saying new from people you follow, right? And it can have your resources in it. Now, used to, it was like most recent would populate in there, and they could click and they could see all of them. Now, my understanding is it's more algorithm driven based on recent purchases that they've made, recent stores that they've interacted with, recent products that they've viewed. You get the idea. It's more algorithm driven. So even if you release a new product, it may not get sent out to all of your followers. It may get sent out to a fraction of them. So there's a lot of antiquated advice that revolves around this new resource email that TPT sends out. For example, during a site-wide sale, you could release new products the night before, and then it would get sent out to your followers the next day. You could release products at the end of day 1 of the sale, and it would get sent out the next day on day 2 of the sale, like new from people you follow, right? They would see your new resources pop up during the sale, which is great advertisement. And so there were all of these kind of strategies that sort of revolved around it. But now that it's more algorithm based, honestly, especially if you don't have very many followers, this is not really something that I would focus on. Because let's say you have 1,000 followers and only 100 of them have interacted with you recently or have a reason for your product to show up in the algorithm based email over somebody else's, then 100 views is really not that much. Very few of those are probably going to convert to any kind of a sale, if any. And so your time could be spent better somewhere else. So while I'm not going to just straight up say TPT emails and newsletters or something you should never try to get into, I'm not going to say that. I just think for the vast majority of people, it's not going to be worth your time. It might be something that, say, you submit a couple of paid and a couple of free resources to the newsletter so that hopefully you can get in. But then after that, I wouldn't let it be a regular thing. Like, submit it, one and done. Once you've submitted it, start focusing on things that you can control within your business versus things that are outside of your control. Another outdated piece of advice is Pinterest. Now, I'm not saying Pinterest is outdated and that Pinterest can't help you. That's not what I'm saying. But the Pinterest strategies that you'll hear in a lot of older videos, a lot of older content, a lot of older blogs, a lot of older podcasts, they're just really outdated. And Pinterest is a piece of a puzzle. So rather than it being a marketing system or strategy in and of itself, it's now a piece of a marketing strategy. So used to, you could create Pinterest pins, these beautiful images, you could link to your TPT store, and you can still do that, but it's not going to be effective. And so this was definitely an antiquated strategy. Now, if you're doing Pinterest, you really want to be doing it in conjunction with other things. And that brings us to where we're at today, which is like, if you're marketing smart, you're marketing effectively, it's thinking about where the buyer comes in, how to collect their data, how to collect their information so that you can contact them on a regular basis, and how you can market to them in an ongoing way. And so Pinterest can be a piece of that marketing puzzle. It can be a part of your funnel, but it's not going to be the beginning and the end of your marketing strategy. Same thing goes for, say, Instagram, blogging, things like that. They can be a piece of your marketing strategy. They can be a piece of your marketing funnel, but it's not the beginning and the end. It's not, I'm going to market on Pinterest and everyone's going to go to TPT and purchase my product. It just doesn't work that way anymore. It's more like, I'm going to write a blog post that links to a freebie and opt-in for my email list. And then I'm going to create pins for that blog post and pin them on Pinterest. So I'm going to pin the pins to my blog about my blog post to Pinterest. They're going to go to my blog post. They're then going to join my email list. And then from there, I get to market the product that I want to sell to them, right? It's a big piece of a funnel. So while pinning on Pinterest used to be a really big strategy for TPT sellers, definitely no longer relevant in the same way. And then finally, number 4 is the 50 product rule. Now, the 50 product rule is not antiquated. We need to update that a little bit. So I used to hear all the time, like, once you hit 50 products, like, that's when you're going to see a significant change, a significant shift in your income. You're going to hit 50 products and you're going to see a jump in your income. Your income is going to be more consistent. You're going to be making more money and all that. And honestly, I think that it could probably still be true, or is probably still true for a lot of people. 50 products, it's a great number to aim for. And then after that, the next one was like 100, right? And then you 50, and then you aim for 100. But I think really the rule of 50 now, at least for me, when I'm talking to new sellers, is less about how much money you're going to be making. It's less about consistency in sales. And it's really more about that once you hit 50, that means it's time to move to the next step in your business, which for me would be creating some of those marketing funnels, or really creating a comprehensive marketing plan and marketing strategy for the resources that you have, because you now have enough resources in your store to make your marketing efforts really worth it. Whereas if I'm, really working hard to grow an email list and I've got thousands of subscribers on my email list and I have like 15 products in my store, it's just sending an email is not going to have the same impact as if I had 50 products versus 15, right? So the rule of 50, I think, is still important. Like, it's still an important number to aim for, but for different reasons than it once was. But I want to finish with this, because a lot of the old advice is still some of the best, most solid advice out there. And here are a few that I can think of off the top of your head. Think about your TPT business as a slow cooker or a crock pot business. And I did not coin that term, someone else did. I cannot remember who it was. I know I've heard like Angie Kratzer talk about it. It may not have even been her, but think about it more as like a slow cooker versus an instant pot. If you think about long term, I'm going to be putting resources into my store. And over time, the thing that I'm doing right now is going to lead me to where I want to be over time. Not, I'm going to put this work in, and in 30 minutes or in 30 days, I'm going to be making the money that I've always dreamed of making. While that does happen for some people, it is absolutely not the norm. And if I'm trying really hard to instantly grow my business, to have an instant pot business, it doesn't mean it's not possible. It just means that I'm really increasing the odds that I'm going to be disappointed, going to be burnt out, and I'm going to feel like a failure because I'm not seeing the results that I want as quickly as I want them. There's a lot to learn when it comes to starting a Teachers Pay Teachers business. It's really and truly not just about creating products and posting them on TPT and watching the money come in. I really wish that it were that simple. And people who tell you that it's that simple, I'm not going to say that they're lying to you. I'm just going to say that they've had a different experience than you maybe, or they've seen people do it before, so they know it's possible, because it's true. It can happen for a very small group of people. And it's not that that small group of people have something special or did something special or necessarily anything like that. It's just that their circumstances, maybe the types of resources that they were creating for a very specific niche, were more in demand, and they happened to, I don't want to use the word luck into it, but they happen to be in a different niche than you are, or they happen to have a different set of circumstances. Maybe they already had an existing audience that they could tap into or market to. There are a number of different reasons why it can happen for different people, and luck is not the only thing. Some of these people put in a lot of time and energy and effort, and they get very little sleep for several months. And they do that and they start to see results really quickly. And that's amazing for them. But I just think it's important to understand that this is not going to be a formula of, if I do these things and I do it this quickly, then I'm going to get this result in 30 days. It's just not really an expectation that I would set for myself, and certainly not an expectation that I would tell anyone else to set for themselves. So if you think about your store as being more of a slow cooker or a crock pot, where I'm going to set myself up for success now, and I'm going to think ahead, and I'm going to think long term. And that involves pulling the meal out of the freezer, letting it thaw the night before, sticking it in the crock pot, turning it on the next morning, putting in the work, putting in the consistency, and then waiting for it to do its thing. That's a little bit more realistic. And I think that that is some really good advice that's been around for a long time. Another piece of advice that's been around for a long time that I think is gold is that when you create high quality products, they really will sell themselves, and they will stand the test of time a whole lot better than resources that you just popped out. So if you're able to create a resource in 30 minutes, that's amazing. But that resource that you created in 30 minutes, chances are, is not going to sell as well long term as a resource that it takes 3 hours or even 30 hours to create. Because if you can create the resource in 30 minutes, so can someone else. And so you're increasing the chances that you're going to have a lot of competition for that product. Also, you're not going to be able to charge as much for it, and teachers are not going to be as willing to pay for it, because they can create something or find something that's very similar online for free, or they can create something themselves because it doesn't take that long to make. But when we're talking about more in-depth resources that take longer to make, and they're very well thought out, very well constructed, and a teacher can use them for a lengthier period of time than just say 30 minutes or a single class period. Now we're talking about resources that are really going to stand the test of time and help bring in money long term and bring in lifelong followers and buyers for your business. Those are a couple of pieces of advice that have really and truly stood the test of the time, that I think every TPT seller should not ignore. No matter how old the blog post was that you read, no matter how old the podcast was that you listened to, it's something that you should still definitely keep in mind as you're creating resources and building up your brand. Thanks so much for being here. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like it and subscribe. I'm trying to hit 6,000 followers. We're almost there before the end of the year, and I would love it if you could help me out with that. If you have a piece of advice that really helped you on your TPT journey, drop it down below for someone else, and I'm going to see you right back here next week.